All right, so
I have to give you a little bit of credit for this.
Yeah, we can overdub it later. Just
Haven't had any crazy stories about. Oh wait, no, I do. I got robbed at gunpoint, mugged.
Checking for me, but I ain't checking for them. No.
sleazy real estate guys. But all right, so in today's episode, we have the pleasure of sitting down with storyteller, filmmaker, and Emmy-winning creative Moises Velasquez.
EMILIO, thank you for having me, brother.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Sorry, I gotta
It's all right.
sneak through here.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm well. I really appreciate you being here.
Likewise.
I know it's Friday night. People like to go out and do their thing.
Hey.
So I appreciate you taking this hour to sit down with us and chat it up.
Happy to.
Does that work? All right. So, and as I told you before, what we typically do here is we get to see the different lens. We get to see the creator and the entrepreneur, the business owner from a different lens.
No,
right?
I love that.
And we're going to go dive into your upbringing and your different ventures. How does that sound?
No, that sounds like a great plan. I love it.
All right, let's do it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's get this going.
Let's do it.
So, Moises.
Emilio.
Moises.
EMILIO.
Okay. All right. Tell me this. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
So I was born in a small town called Puebla, Mexico.
Okay.
My mom's from Puebla, a smaller town called Huehuetlán el Chico, and my dad's from the city. But I came to the U.S. at about 3 years old.
Okay.
So I lived in California for maybe about a year.
Okay.
But I was so small I didn't remember anything. So raised in Delaware.
Okay. And what took you guys to California?
I think it was just close.
Okay.
You know, my dad had a brother there initially, so that's where we kind of stayed for I think a few months, and then made the transition over to Delaware. Why Delaware? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Again, I think my mom ultimately had a sister. Well, she does have a sister here. But she also has a sister in New York.
Right.
I don't know like what ultimately led anybody to Delaware, but there seems to be a large population of
True.
different background people that come to Delaware, and I like it here.
As do I. I came to the country when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
First landed in Delaware, moved to New York for a few years, then came back in Delaware.
Oh, nice.
Essentially followed with my dad because of work.
Okay.
Right. I always told myself like the moment I get to, be an adult, I'll move back to New York. But then I became an adult. And I was like, I don't know if I really like the idea of New York to live in. I was like, I like Delaware. It feels like a headquarters.
Yeah.
If I want to go to New York, I can.
Yeah.
But I don't have to. If I want to go to D.C., I'm like 2 hours away. New York is like 2 hours away. It's convenient. I look at it like a headquarter.
Yeah, for sure.
You
I
know?
like New York in small doses.
Yeah. Well, my mom still lives in New York, so I
Okay.
still go visit her.
Yeah.
She's actually going to be in town tomorrow, so
Wow.
looking forward to that. My mom's always telling me that every time I see her from time to time, the first thing, Hispanic moms, man, they have no filter.
No.
They have no filter. She'll be like, you're doing this, going out too much, or other cases. But, we love them regardless.
Like, Mom, live my life. Let me live.
Exactly, right? Exactly. All right. So you moved to Delaware at what age?
I want to say I was 3.
Okay.
3, 4. I don't
Okay.
remember. I was so little. I was a little kid.
Okay, and take me through. Tell me a little bit about your household. What did your household look like when you moved to Delaware?
So initially, I think the first, I want to say 3, 4 years, we were in apartments. So it was apartment to apartment. I think that one of the clearest memories I have was not being able to like run in a house.
Okay.
Because, we lived above people. So my parents were like conscious
Right.
of like, hey, don't run, don't
Yeah.
jump. And for some reason, one of the earliest memories I have is like my dad was able to, I guess, get a different unit in the, floor unit.
Yeah.
And I remember having to talk to the manager. He was like, all right, tell the manager that we need to move down here so that you can run and this and that. So I
Yeah.
remember like being a little kid, I think learning English and like trying to explain to him like, hey, look, we want to move here so I can run and this and that. So that was an early memory. But yeah, it was a lot of apartments. And
Okay.
then I want to say when I was probably 10 or so, my younger brother was being born and my parents bought a house.
Okay.
So that was really where the majority of, I think, my memories were formed.
Tell me about the learning journey from only knowing Spanish to then learning English.
Yeah, I mean, I was so little. I think I mean, thankfully, I had a mom who was involved in education. You know,
Okay.
even though she went to high school, she did all those things, but not knowing the language, she was motivated enough to talk to people and to figure out like what programs she should put me in. So she put me in kindergarten or pre. What did she put me in? She put me in Head Start.
Okay. Which means what?
So it's like a pre-K type system, like a precursor to kindergarten.
Okay.
So she put me in Head Start. So I was there, I want to say 2 years before I went into kindergarten.
Okay.
Which enabled me, I guess, a lot of socialization to be able to talk to people in English. And I had people, I guess there were teachers there who spoke English and Spanish who were able to sort of
Ease you into
teach
it.
me and like teach me the alphabet. And I
Yeah.
just remember like saying the alphabet a million times and going home and saying the alphabet and like counting numbers.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got to elementary school, that program I think helped me because by elementary school or kindergarten, I was really becoming more aware, but I still had like, I was still being pulled out of class to go to talk to this person to make sure my speech was going correctly and this and that. But by first grade, I was able to read and write in English. And
Okay.
it's pretty straightforward.
Pretty fluent,
I think I caught on pretty quickly in terms of the language.
I guess and that's what I hear a lot about learning like several languages is like the younger you start doing it.
Yeah.
Because your brain is like so fresh that you're able to pick it up a whole lot faster.
I'm definitely grateful for it. I give kudos to those who had to learn it later on in life.
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely a harder experience, especially on the socialization aspect, like engaging with kids.
Yeah.
But I also went to an elementary school where it was a dual language school. So I had a week in English and a week in Spanish.
Oh, snap. Okay.
So that made it even better for me to really be like, okay, I can sort of understand it better. And I had
I've
teachers.
never heard of that format. Okay. Did that format have a specific name?
It was just dual. The school is still a school. It's called William C. Lewis Dual Language Elementary School.
Oh, wow.
And I think they do things a little differently in the sense that it's not every week. I think they switch every day or every half day, but it's still the same principle where a lot of Hispanic kids, but there's also non-native Spanish speakers that go into the program. In fact, they have it to where you can start in kindergarten and go all the way to high school, and even after high school to UD. UD has like a program where you can double major in Spanish and whatever else you.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. I didn't do all that.
Okay.
I really stopped after
So,
kindergarten or fifth grade.
Since you picked up English at an early age, how is your English in comparison to your Spanish?
At this point, I would say my English is better than my Spanish.
Okay.
And primarily only because, like, day to day, all I do is speak English. Like,
Touche.
I very rarely. Ironically enough, the job I have now has pushed me to speak more Spanish than I have probably the last 8 years of my life.
Okay.
From a non-family standpoint, I speak Spanish at home, but with my parents, but from a business, from a even just employer base.
Yeah.
The last few months have been the most Spanish I've had to talk.
Really?
And I've had to focus on being like grammatically correct and writing in Spanish. And I'm like, oh shit.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I got to make sure like I'm on top of my shit. Like, where do I add an accent again? Like those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm like calling my mom. I'm like, hey, can you look this over? Like, I sent you an email.
Okay.
Like, what do you think of it?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I definitely feel you on that because, what my mom says is, my mom calls it as like, oh, you've been Americanized.
Yeah.
That's the term that she uses. I'm like, it's like she says it, and like you don't know whether to take it as a compliment, or as an insult. Like, she's like, "This is why you brought me here," right?
And I keep seeing like all the things are like no sabo kids.
Okay. Oh wait, I've heard of that.
Yeah,
I've heard of that
they're like the kids that like no sabo. Like I don't know. It's like they're grammatically incorrect.
Yeah.
So I'm like making sure I'm like I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
But I also like I've been in situations where I'm talking to people that, all they do is speak Spanish, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But even having a limited vocabulary in the sense of like professionalism, like I can speak casually Spanish, no problem. But when it comes to speaking correctly in front of children or in a more like professional environment, that's where I'm like, oh shit, I didn't learn this.
I haven't been in that situation yet, but I could imagine how it'd be very challenging for me.
Just a little bit,
Yeah.
because like I feel like I have a pretty comprehensive vocabulary in English, and then once I get to Spanish, I'm like,
Yeah, it's like
how do you say that?
because there's a lot of words that comprehensive words that you know in English,
Yeah.
that you've never used in
Never-
Spanish.
yeah, like I'm not gonna talk to my mom about like
Yeah.
taxes or like
Right.
I don't know, just random things.
Right.
You
No,
know,
I know exactly what you mean. Okay, which is interesting because when I came into the country, I went through a program called ESL.
Okay.
Which is
yeah,
English,
I was in that. Yeah.
Is that what it was called?
So I was in that for a little bit through, I want to say like really 5th grade, because I was out of it by the time I got to middle school.
Okay.
They would randomly pull me for like tests, and I was like, "What am I taking this test for?"
Yeah.
But it was, it was ESL.
Yeah.
But again, like the school was so mixed into it was 1 week, 1 week off that it didn't really feel like anything because everybody was doing it.
Right.
Every kid I feel like was
So
ESL.
it just felt like normal.
Yeah, every kid spoke Spanish I went to class with. So it was cool.
Yeah, no. I thought that's what it was. It sounded very familiar to what I did growing up. So it's pretty cool that you did that too. And as did I. Like once I got to like 6th grade, I was out of it. It's almost like, oh, I was in this.
I know. Yeah.
You know?
I remember at one point, like in 7th grade, they're like, mind you, I'm taking like honors English, like I'm taking like all these classes.
Yeah.
And one day in 7th grade, they're like, "Hey, we need you to come down and take this test." I'm like, "All right." So I show up. I'm like in like this back room at this school, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "What am I doing?"
Right,
here?"
right.
So, "Oh, we need you to take this test." I'm like, "I haven't had to take a test like this in years."
Right.
So I take it like literally 2 minutes. I'm like,
There you
"Like
go.
you're done?" I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, I thought we were done with this.
Okay, so let's fast forward into to your high school days.
Yeah.
Right. Where did you go to high school?
So I went to Thomas McCain High School. I
Okay.
heard I went to Dickinson. Huh?
Yeah. You actually, literally, the last guest we recorded with also went to Dickinson.
Oh, no.
I mean, to McCain.
Okay.
And the one before that went to Dickinson.
Wow.
And mind you, I didn't know them because of that.
Yeah.
I just Delaware is so
Yeah,
small.
yeah, that's how
Every
it
other
goes.
person knows each other. So tell me about your McCain days.
McCain was fun. So
From a social, let's start with, because there's two aspects to anything academically, right?
Yeah.
There's like the social aspect, and then there's the academic aspect.
of course.
So tell me about, let's start with academics. Tell me about your academic time in McCain.
Well, I'll start by saying I was not a great student in middle school.
Okay.
So high school for me was like a reinvention of myself.
Really?
Right? Like it gave me I didn't know anybody. I went 3 years with making all these friends most of the friends I still have today are from middle school.
Okay.
They're like lifelong friends.
Yeah.
There's a few here and there exceptions, but when I got to high school, it was like, I don't really know many people here. I knew a couple, but we didn't have necessarily classes together. So it really kind of forced me to like meet a lot of new people and socialize and sort of go outside in a way that I wasn't it was kind of, it was nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Especially, being a freshman and getting there. And I'm like, I don't know who anybody is. I
Right.
was just in a school for 3 years. All my friends are still there.
Right.
But it was good because it really helped me sort of become a better student.
Okay.
So I ended up becoming like the class president all 4 years. I
Oh,
ended up getting
snap.
involved. It was like academically, I was really I was doing well. I was taking all honors courses. I took AP courses. I was still kind of a finesser in the sense that like I would befriend teachers and like try to get away with not doing homework. And I was like, I don't need to do summer
Yeah.
reading. So like I was a selectively good student. Like
Yeah.
on paper, I was a good student.
Yeah.
Off paper, I was like trying to work out deals with teachers
Yeah.
and be like, hey, like, I don't need to do this, right? Like I'm doing this other thing. Like I'm on this,
Yeah.
I'm on the swim team. Like
Yeah.
I don't have time. Like,
So you mentioned earlier that, is it no sabo?
no summer, yeah.
But you were sabido.
Yeah.
You were the opposite of
Yeah,
that.
I was like trying to figure out how to get out of stuff and like
Some would say maybe like a Rico Suave,
a little bit.
A little
yeah.
bit?
It was just a little finesse,
There you go.
But
So-
no, it was a fun time.
Tell me how, because here's what I find, right? Typically what I find is those who are very academically inclined tend to be socially not as much there.
Yeah.
So was that the case for you, or did you have a balance of both?
No, I think I had a good balance. I mean,
Okay.
if anything, I was more social, I think. Don't get me wrong, I got good grades, but I was also, I didn't think it was that hard what I was
Yeah.
doing, But no, I think socially, like I had a great time socially. A lot of people say they didn't like high school. I had a great time.
Okay.
I had parties, I went out, I had fun, swim
Yeah,
team,
because I always ask that specific high school question, and the majority is typically it's like like Yeah, what it is, what it is, what it is, type of thing. So, and another question I'd like to ask with that, with the social aspect of things, who were you in high school in terms of, the groups of kids? Were you part of the cool kids? Were you the part of like in the middle, or were you like the guy who were like was always like in the back of things, just like in the shadows?
I feel like, McCain really wasn't too cliquey in that sense. Like, we didn't really have jocks, and we didn't really have like, there were like, I'm sure that there were kids who were like, oh, like those were like the bad kids, or like the stoners, or this or that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily go as far as saying like, oh, like these were the cool kids.
Yeah.
Like it kind of felt, everybody felt like kind of equal in a way. But there were social groups, you know, like there was definitely, like, we definitely had a group because we were all like taking the same classes.
Yeah.
And we're all like, oh, let's do this. Like, all my friends are taking AP classes. Like, I was like, I don't know if I want to take that, but they're all there, and I don't want to go to I don't really know any of those kids.
Right.
So like, we all kind of stuck together. But
Okay.
I mean, I guess I was pretty social.
So I guess by default, I'll put you in the middle then. If you felt like there weren't really any cliques, you're pretty much able to get along with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, and that was always my thing. Like, I tried to get along with everybody.
Okay.
Just because I was like,
Yeah.
I've been on all sides of the spectrum from school,
Right.
from like being the shy kid in elementary school, to like being a hooligan and reckless in middle school and just doing stupid shit.
Okay.
To like really, like, I was in high school, I was like, shit, I should probably get my stuff together.
All right.
But also still like being like kind of like an energy and like
and you
bunny.
did swimming.
I swam. I played soccer for a little bit.
Okay.
I did the play. I did the radio station. Like, I was always involved in something.
Now, was this because you wanted to do it, or your parents were an influence on this?
No, I wanted to do it.
Okay.
And all my friends were doing it. Right?
Okay.
So like, I mean, I wanted to swim. That was my thing. I took swim lessons all my life. My parents always put me in swim lessons. So, that was kind of one of the bigger social things again, like because I made a lot of friends there, and a lot of the kids that I was friends with would swim. So we were all kind of just.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you a more in-depth question on that whole thing. Is one answer you keep giving me is, all my friends were doing it.
Yeah.
Right. In that sense, in that of group of friends, were you the leader of the group? Were you a member of the group? Were you kind of like the one that's standing out in the group a little bit more? Where were you in that?
I would say that I think I was a leader. I mean, I was the class president. I was kind of doing my own thing. And that became even more evident as I got into like junior year when I found film.
Okay.
I was really kind of like, everybody would be like, oh, like he's over there editing. Like, I had a client right at the time.
Yeah.
And they would make fun of me. They'd be like, oh, like you're over there like making commercials for beard care products, like for beard butters.
You had a client in high school.
I had a client in high school.
That's awesome.
And
because I've been to McCain before. You guys have like a very cool studio.
Yeah, there's a whole studio in there. But I wasn't in the class. That was the thing. Like, I wasn't, like, I kind of found it on a like sort of on a whole different top or a whole different way. But by the end of my junior year, I was kind of doing my own thing. Like, I would leave class early. I would beg the teachers to like leave early, or like make excuses why I'm late, and work out deals like, I'll get my homework later. I wouldn't do it, but
okay.
It was I would say, to sum it up, I think I was a leader in my own way.
Yeah.
But we were a pretty like chill group in the sense that I think we all kind of had a voice.
Okay. And after McCain, did you pursue further education, or did you go a different route?
So right out of, originally my plan was to go to Temple. I got into Temple. I was planning to go, and then once I really got to that, I went to orientation. It was an overnight orientation. I was like, this is awesome. Like, I'm in love with this campus. Excuse me. I hadn't gotten any paperwork for like financial aid, and so I'm like, oh shit, I should probably go and ask somebody. Yeah. So I go to the financial aid office. I'm talking to them. I'm like, hey, like I haven't gotten anything financial aid. Like, what's going on? They're like, oh yeah, you didn't get any financial aid. So school starts next week. We're gonna need 18 grand in order for you to start for the semester. I was like, yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Wow.
It was one of those moments where I'm like, wow, I just had a great time. I made a bunch of friends. I was in films. I was gonna go to film school. Yeah. And I was able to actually get moved up to a different level. Like, I wasn't gonna be like in the base level, and it was definitely like one of the like the hardest like.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I feel like I should know this. You're talking about the financial aid and how you were told that You did not get any what's it called, grants essentially,
Just any financial
any
aid,
support,
any-
financial support. So you were told that after the fact, once
Yeah,
you had already enrolled.
Yeah. So I mean, keep in mind, like, you know, I did the whole college application.
Yeah.
I did all of my parents
Yeah.
had really, they were just like, oh, apply to the schools, you know, like keep doing it. Like they would help. Obviously, they would pay for the applications, and I applied a lot of places.
Now, is that how it works? Is it that you apply, or you enroll, and then you apply, or you apply and then you enroll?
So I think you can do the Common App, if I remember correctly. It's been a while, but I think the Common App gets you. It's like an application that you generally fill in, and then from there you send applications to certain schools. I don't remember if the cost is all for one or if you have to independently pay for
Yeah.
each school. But, you know, I did that for a few schools.
Yeah.
Not really, but again, like I think the one school I did the Common App was for was like UD, but I wanted to go to film school.
Yeah.
So every school that I really applied for was out of the Common App. Like I applied to USC, Syracuse, Temple. And ultimately, Temple is. I was like, you know what, Temple's like a good one. Like I knew a lot of people that were sort of involved in Philly, so I was like, all right, it's gonna be a good one.
Okay.
And at the time, ironically, like I had a scholarship for auto tech. My dad owns an auto shop, so all my life I've been involved in cars, and really up until my junior year of high school, I'm like, I'm gonna work on cars. And then to discover something like the end of my junior year that ultimately changed everything, I was like, I'm going to Temple. Like I don't. I was like, I don't need. I did the tour at the auto tech school. It was cool. They're like, hey, we'll give you like a full ride. This and that. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna take it. And then I was like, oh, I felt on top of the world, right? I'm like, I'm going to I'm Temple Film School. Like, it's gonna be awesome. And then for them to say like, and to give me that news, I was like,
right. So then, what did you do after that?
It was a long drive home.
Yeah.
Long drive home.
What do you mean by that?
Just, it was, you know, like you get hit with information, like you have a set plan on what you're going to do for the next few months at least. You know, I'm going to go to film school. I'm going to meet a bunch of people. I've met a bunch of people at the orientation. And then to be hit with, we're not going to give you any financial aid. You owe us 18 grand if you want to continue for the semester is like, it's a sad drive home, you know? Like
what was going through your head on the drive back home?
Just like, I guess, like, let me backtrack in the sense that I think the majority of my high school career, you know, I'm doing all these extracurricular activities. I'm National Honor Society. I'm doing all these things to build up my resume to go to college.
Right.
To then be like, yeah, you're not going to college. To then it's like, whew, did I just waste 4 years of my life? Like, what would I have done differently? All my friends are going to college, and then, you know, in August, like, who am I? Like, am I a loser? Like, what do I do?
Okay.
So it was really tough. It was like, fuck. Like, I think it was probably the most depressed I was for a while. Just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I going to do? I said no to that scholarship. Do I call them back? Like, it was tough. Yeah. It was tough. But I had a mentor, a film mentor, who ultimately is the person that got me involved in film. And I was working on like some random video. I don't know. Like, I would still work out of the high school, and they would let me use equipment and stuff. I didn't have like my own stuff yet. And so I was there, I think, like the week before I was supposed to go into Temple. He's like, so when do you start school? Like, he's like, I'm so jealous, bro. Like, he was like, he went to USC. He was like a frat guy. So he's like, dude, he's like, I'm jealous. Like, he's like, that was a great time. I'm sure it was, bro. I dropped out. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, you know, like, I didn't get any aid, this and that. He's like, so what are you gonna do? I was like, I have no idea. I was like, I have no idea, dude.
Okay.
No idea, bro. He's like, well, my editor left. I need an editor. Like, would it interest you? Mind you, I'm like, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. I was like, I was like, I don't know how much it pays. I don't really care. Let's do it. He's like, all right, well, let me talk to, you know, his boss at the time. He's like, let's see if we can get it done, and you can start, like, we'll start you like as just small projects, and we'll see where it evolves. But ultimately, he was happy with what I was creating, so you know, like a week here and there turned into a full-time job, like right away. Okay. And that's ultimately where I continued for like 7 years, just kind of crafting, creating content for a kids network, which is ironically where I went to high school out of McCain. And just continued.
That was how you built your relationship from student to now working with Red Clay.
That was initially it, yeah.
Okay.
So Red Clay has a TV channel called EdTV that was started in like 2014. And it was around the time that I sort of started getting involved, because I was involved in the radio station with this volunteer named Gus Highfield who was there. And so, I was in the radio station, which was a shared space with the green screen room, the studio, the TV channel. And I was always curious. I was like, fuck, like all the kids walking around with cameras. Like, in my head, I'm like, I just want to get out of class. Like, they're filming. Like, they're walking through the halls. Like, fuck, like that seems fun. But I didn't do it because I was really involved in auto tech. So I was an Avid. I don't know if you know Avid.
It sounds familiar, but it's not.
It's like a college readiness course. So again, to add to the blow of like dropping out, I'm like, because
those are supposed to count towards.
That's an electoral. So I could have taken film, but instead I took Avid because I'm like, I'm going to college. So then it was like another thing. Like when they were like, you're not going to finish. I was like, did I just waste fucking 4 years taking Avid? I could have taken video, or I could have done something. I could have taken engineering. Maybe I would have been an engineer.
Yeah.
But I think all things kind of work out naturally as they're supposed to.
Okay. So it was like you almost like just ended up having to fully dive into your film career.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and leading up, again, like junior year was when I sort of discovered film, and I dove all right in, right? Like I would get home, watch YouTube videos on how to make films, go practice what I learned, go to school, practice, edit, get out of class early, go back to the editing room. Like that was my life. And so I've been doing that. My mentor, who's Rob Markopoulos at the time, he was guiding me. He's like showing me. He's like, "Oh, you're picking this up quick." I'm like, "Dude, it's fun. Like I don't know. Like I don't tell you, it's fun." And it just kept going and going. And ultimately he was like, "Do you want the job?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like I don't know what else I'm gonna do. Okay. And it sounds fun.
So you mentioned something specific that I hear a lot actually with people that end up going their own route is YouTube.
Yeah.
All right.
YouTube.
Like how powerful of a tool do you think YouTube is?
I would say it's made me who I am, really. Like in a sense of, at least early on, you know, and I think it helps change. I mean, listen, there's so many, I think, little things that I've learned that have become really big things. Film, you know, the principles behind marketing, behind like Facebook ads, behind like Photoshop skills that later on turned into like things that I'm doing now for brands that have sort of grown exponentially. So I would say YouTube is, I would always tell people, because, you know, I've had a lot of people that are like, oh, like, you know, should I drop out? I'm like, listen, I can't make that decision for you. All I can say is that if you're going to drop out, you need to be really motivated to do something. Yeah. Because otherwise, like, what are you working towards? Like, you have to be driven enough to want to look up the information to learn on your own. Right. And for me, YouTube was that, right? Like, and my mentor, you know, like I was blessed to have a mentor that was an award-winning director. He directed spots for like giant brands and he worked for NFL Films. So he knew what he was talking about, right? And if we wanted to do something creative that we didn't know how to do, it was like, oh, dude, look it up on YouTube. And that was always my go-to. I was like, right, Google, YouTube, like, I'll learn how to do it.
So two things with what you just said. The first one being is, have you seen Oppenheimer?
Yeah. No, not yet.
The movie.
And no, I have not.
Please do. There's one scene, it's not going to spoil anything, where he takes the physics, his version of it, Oppenheimer, into the U.S. from Europe, I think, and he specifically sets up his shop next to a room of where they do run different tests, right? Sure. And he meets the head guy in that room, and he's like, the guy tells him, he's like, I was like, well, who's gonna come to your class if like this is not a thing here? Yeah. And then he's like, oh, well, you know, become popular, or, you know, I bring it and it'll become popular over time. And then he's like, oh, but theory would only take you so far. Right. And then he's like, oh, well, that's why I set myself up right next to you to test these theories. Right. And I say that because it reminded me of what you said in sense of like the information is there, but the information will only take you so far if you don't apply it.
No, absolutely. Like you, like again, like I would YouTube, and then I'm like, all right, well, I gotta fucking go film with my phone. Yeah. Like I didn't have a camera at the time, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot.
And
of
the second thing was, how do you think academia today compares to like going outside of that, something like trade school or a path of maybe like the one that you took? How do you think that compares?
Well, I think it's a lot of like self-understanding, right?
Okay.
Like I had enough sort of self-awareness to where I was like, but I also had a lot of luck early on to where I was like, I had people that I had made friends with that were like, I'll pay you to do this. And I think, natural skill had something to do with that.
Yeah.
But I say that because, if you're the type, again, to want to do something that is outside of, I think, the traditional norm, finance or banking or investing or film or, I don't know, starting your own business that doesn't necessarily require an education, that's great. Do it, right? But if you need more of a formal structure, then I think school is right, because school is not only going to give you that structure, but it's also going to give you a lot of social aspects that I sort of missed out on, which is part of what I was really looking forward to as well, because I was like, everybody was like, it's for the experience, bro. And I'm like, all right, it's a lot of partying. It sounds fun. Like, I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it, like so many of my experiences, so many of my influences are from like meeting you at a social event, like things like that.
Right.
But versus trade school too, I think it just depends on the individual. Like, I always tell people, they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, think about something you kind of like, explore it and pursue it.
Okay.
If you like it, you'll naturally dive deeper into it. If not, it's sort of like, all right, I got to find what's next.
Okay.
And I don't think it's ever that fully simple, right? Like there were times where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this forever.
Right. But it's almost like having the confidence that it's all this 2020 in hindsight.
Yeah.
But it's almost like having that arrogant optimism
Yeah.
to know that things are going
100%.
to work itself out.
Yeah, I'm always like, I think I was like, the best bet is myself. Right? Which is like kind of slightly, I'm like, maybe not. And I'm like, I should still get, a 401k and invest money into it. But I'm like, no, but generally speaking, I'm like, listen, if I'm going to bet, I'm going to bet on myself and see if it works out. And but again, like trying to continuously take steps forward towards doing something. Not just sort of expecting it to fall on my lap. And don't get me wrong, I've gotten extremely lucky to where things do kind of fall on my lap, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm happy I was here.
Yeah, hey, the more you prepare, the luckier you get.
Yeah, but again, like I feel like also things kind of fall on my lap when I'm ready for them.
There you go.
In a sense, because I feel like I've gotten projects now to where I'm like, if I would have gotten that 2 years ago, even a year ago, I don't know if I would have been ready, like mentally, like financially, like just creatively. I feel like little things evolve you as a person, that sort of like things happen at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
To say the least.
So let's dive into once you started working with Red Clay, and let's go from there.
Yeah.
Tell me about how, you told us how that relationship started, but tell me how it evolved.
So, excuse me. So yeah, I started working at EdTV. I started off as an editor primarily. My first project was to take this show that we had filmed at Delaware Children's Museum and turned it into a show. And it took me a long time, right? Maybe like 2 weeks, because he was like, make it really creative. Like it's a kid's show. So, make it how you would. So I spent it took me a long time because I was learning how to do it. So I'm like looking up like how to do this, how to do that. And I made a documentary, a 3-part documentary in high school. Yeah. So I had a lot of it. I think that's ultimately where he made the decision to like, oh, okay, like I can hire you and you can actually create stuff. But I was trying to, again, push myself in the sense that I was trying to deliver something that I was like, this is going to be on TV. Like people are going to see this. Like it's got to be good. Yeah. Looking back, I mean, it was good for a kid out of high school. But so again, just sort of exploring, pushing.
It's like you're pleasing like two different crowds, right? You're pleasing the customer itself, but you're also pleasing the people paying for this kind of stuff.
So I'm like, this has to be good. And I also can't spend too much time on it because I got to do another show. But it was a lot of that. It was a lot of learning. It was a lot of him teaching me like, hey, we're going to go on this shoot. We're going to do this. I didn't have a camera at the time, so we used cameras that the school had. I mean, it was a studio, so they had everything that I needed. But it was also an opportunity. I filmed a video in high school. Again, like going back to Maestro's, off topic. We can talk about them later. But the owner hit me up and was like, "Hey, like I really like the video you did early on. Like, can you do other stuff for me?" And he was, again, like the owner of Maestro's Classic was a mentor of mine, still a great friend of mine. And I was so lucky to have Rob and Anthony as mentors, because I always say like Rob is my, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Like Rob is my creative mentor, my creative dad, and Anthony was sort of like my entrepreneur dad.
Okay.
And my dad was also an entrepreneur, but Anthony was an entrepreneur in like a different scale
Okay.
and exposed me to things that I'd never seen.
Okay.
So it was cool.
Definitely a few more things I want to dive in with that. Yeah, so especially with your dad too. So where did, once you built that experience and relationship with Red Clay and you worked up your role, because you said you were what, editor first?
I was an editor. I mean, editor really became like an associate producer, right? So I was filming. And he would challenge me, right? He'd be like, "Hey, come up with a show." I'd be like, "Fuck, all right." Like,
Yeah.
I was still exploring myself creatively because I think
Yeah.
technically I was good, but I was like creatively, like, where am I? And he was really good at creative, right? He was
Yeah.
really good at coming up with show ideas and like concepts. And I was like, all right, I can do things. I can do things technically, but like he comes up with this stuff like
Yeah.
really well. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's where I was trying, and that's where he was pushing me.
Okay.
Right? He'd be like, "Hey, write this show," or he'd be like, "Hey, go shoot this," or he'd be like, in the summer, he'd be like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
he'd give me assignments. He'd be like, "Hey, go film a promo with circles."
Okay.
I was like, "What?" He's like, "Just take
Okay.
circular things, film them, and then make a promo out of it." And like,
Oh, wow.
So I was like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
So I would do it, and then he'd be like,
Yeah.
"It's all right. It could be better." So I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Fuck."
So it really forces you to think outside.
And it was
the
kind of
box.
annoying, right? Because I was
Okay.
like, "Fuck, like, dude, like I'm tired." And he's like, "I don't know." But then at the end, I'd be like, "Oh shit, no, it is pretty good."
Yeah.
Yeah, so
There you go.
It
Okay.
was one of those things I was grateful for.
And where are you now with Red Clay?
So I left I worked in Red Clay from 2015 to 2020. And it was really a difficult decision for me to make, but one that I think ultimately paid off. And I worked for Maestro's Classic for 2.5 years. I still work for them as a contractor, or as a consultant, really. And but the opportunity came up to where Rob, my mentor, left, and he was like, "Hey, I know my son was born," and he was like, "Hey, like, I know your son was born. You know, there was some insurance wasn't great in my other role, really expensive, by the way. Health insurance is crazy."
Okay.
But he was like, "Would you want to take the job?" I was like, "I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want it."
Yeah.
Because at Maestro's, I had full creative freedom to do whatever I wanted to.
Right.
My hours were really
Right.
like super flexible. Like I would, because I was directly connected with the CEO.
Yeah.
I was talking directly with the CEO. So as long as I got my projects done, it was sort of like I had free reign. So to go to a structure that I knew the structure, I was like,
It almost goes against the whole creative process, right?
yeah, a little bit. And I was like, I don't know if it's the right move.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it, and I was like, well, I'm having a son. Health insurance is very expensive.
Yeah, right.
And they're also giving me a pension. And like,
All right.
pension, like health
Yeah.
insurance. Health
Yeah.
insurance is a tenth
Yeah.
compared to my other employer, and my other employers could
Yeah.
keep me on as a subcontract or as a contractor. So I was like,
By the way, things that people go to college for.
right.
And now you have the opportunity at the door for you.
Well, and again, to have my mentor's role,
Yeah.
as an administrative position, really for the district. I remember during my onboarding, I was there with getting hired with like teachers and IT people, and they're like, "Oh, make sure you have a copy of your transcripts, this and that." And she gets to me and she's like, "You have your transcripts?" I was very professional. I was like, "No." She's like, "You don't have your transcripts?" I was like, "I have no transcripts." She's
Okay.
like, "Oh." She's like, "Well, you're hired, so you're good." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, like, we've already had this conversation."
Yeah.
No, I do not have any transcripts. I'm being hired solely off of my
Experience.
portfolio and
Yeah.
experience. And it was cool. It was kind of a cool
Right.
moment, right? Because I
Right,
was
yeah.
like, damn, everybody here went to school, like,
Yeah.
traditionally, probably has a bunch of debt. I have
Yeah.
no debt other than like a house. And
Which a lot would argue is good debt.
yeah, of course.
yeah.
And so it was cool. It was one of those moments where I was like, this is cool. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm probably one of the younger people here, so it felt good in that sense.
There you go. So and now, before, just because you explained it the way you did, I feel like asking you, going outside of the box
Yeah.
per se, is now that you did that, right? You call it the third door,
Yeah,
right? How does that feel for you?
taking on Red Clay again.
As in, like, you got what you would, because people go to college essentially really for, yes, the partying and all that
Yeah.
stuff, but outside of that, it's the job,
Yeah.
the career, the security, the pension, the benefits, all that
Yeah.
stuff, right? But now you have that in front of you.
Yeah.
And now, how did that make you feel?
I feel good. You know, like I think like, taking a step back and looking at it, I feel good. But I'm also the kind of person that's like, yeah, but I could do this. So I feel good. Don't get me wrong. I feel very grateful. I love genuinely what I do and the opportunity that I have. But I think there's always a hunger in me to like keep exploring something.
Yeah, and that's
I'm
the
like,
entrepreneur in you, man.
yeah,
That's the
I
entrepreneur in you.
was like, this isn't the end. I was like, but also like this came at the perfect time.
Okay.
Like I kid you not, like I've been extreme. So I'm gonna reference Lil Wayne for a second.
Yeah, sure.
Someone
Yeah,
he was-
he's a great poet.
He didn't even know it, bro. But he was doing an interview with somebody, it's like the most obscure random interview, and she asked him something specific, and he was like, "I can't speak to that." He's like in his wheezy voice. But what he was saying is he's like, "I can't speak to that." He's like, because I got extremely lucky. Like his career kind of took off. He was sort of. He's like, I can't speak. I think he was talking about racism. He's like, I can't speak to that. I am who I am. Like, I've never experienced that, something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it's a similar thing for me. Like, I've like so many opportunities have like kind of come to the table at the perfect time. I kid you not, my son was about to be born within like 3-4 months. I was in the middle of buying a house. I was looking for months.
Yeah.
And this opportunity comes for Red Clay to start working with them. And so I originally had an interview. They're like, when can you start? I was like, look, I can't start for like a while just because like I have to close on a property and I'm having a kid and there's a lot of moving steps. If I start this job and quit my other job, the bank might shut me down. And so I bought the house, started the job the following week, and my son was born in like a month or two. Maybe a little more in November. Yeah, like 3 months. But it was like super weird timing. And then like right out of that, like I'm getting a bunch of new clients. And I was like, oh my God, like extremely overwhelmed because I'm like, I got to move. Like, I'm having a baby. Like all these different
all
pieces.
At once. Jeez.
But it was really cool. It was like almost weird. I'm like, how did this work out? Like I have health insurance for my son. I had health insurance, but it was like very expensive. Again.
Yeah. So now that you had the health insurance expense off your shoulders, and now
it's just a sigh of relief, you know, because it's like, I had like just things I had to use health insurance for, and it was like, holy shit, this is really expensive.
and tell me, keeping up with the timeline here, where did your venture, mostly film stuff, come in?
So mostly film stuff was always kind of there. It's been my Instagram handle for years.
Okay.
So I guess I'll backtrack in saying that I formed a production company, my own production company, which was like MVP Studios, was Moises Velasquez Productions, right? Like right out of high school. And I had a couple clients, but it was generally smaller things. Maestro was my biggest client. And it was one that, gave me a lot of freedom because it was kind of like a retainer fee early on.
And for those the viewers that don't understand what retainer fee means, would you mind explaining what that means?
It's just sort of, I guess, like an allowance, right? Like we establish, negotiate sort of monthly sort of projects that are sort of allocated, and it's sort of, I hate using the word residual, but it's every month there's projects every month,
right?
And it wasn't necessarily set up like that early on, but there were projects every month, and it was coming in every month.
So essentially, they pay you up front for the services are to come.
Yeah, or like I knew it was guaranteed.
Okay.
On top of Ed TV, so it was pretty good early on.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, the question was essentially explaining what a retainer is, just for the viewers who did not know what they were.
Yeah.
So, and you had Moises Velasquez Productions, MVP, but then mostly film stuff.
Yeah. So
How did that evolve?
from MVP Productions, having early look into a retainer, which is just sort of, again, an agreement every month that kind of is consistent across the month. To then forming Yummy Creative, which was with Rob, my mentor. And we did that for about 2 years. But that was I think the thing that really pushed me into the entrepreneurship space more. Okay. Like I was always entrepreneurship driven in the sense that I was always helping my dad and trying to figure out how to grow the business and do this and that. But that was my first time handling something myself, to where I was like, I love Rob, but we saw differently in the sense of like pushing clients. You know, like I was looking for clients, and I'm
Right.
like, hey, bro, like help me out.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was taking courses. You know, I was going to this, I was going to that,
Yeah.
and I did land us we did one job that I landed us that was $60,000.
Oof, nice. Congrats. That's
And
awesome.
I mean, I didn't get 60 grand, you know, but it was like, you know, we had to pay this crew, we had to pay that crew. I mean,
Right.
I did pretty good in that,
Right.
on that project, but you know, not too soon after that, we kind of dissolved. You know what I mean? I was like,
Okay.
dude, this is when we should be fucking hitting it hard.
Right.
So I think we were just at different points in our life.
Uh-huh.
But from that point, I left not too long after that. And I started a different company called Better Puzzles.
Uh-huh.
And I did that for about 2 years with my friend Bryce.
Okay.
And it was great. It was fun. It actually really pushed me creatively.
Okay.
But I ended up getting really away from film
Okay.
because I was focused entirely on entrepreneurship, on marketing, on we were doing different kind of work. So
Yeah.
all my life I've been doing film work for Maestros.
Yeah.
Now we're doing marketing and we're doing business consulting in the sense of like looking
Okay.
at like systems and processes
Okay.
and trying to understand the business
Yeah.
and how to get into retail,
Yeah.
like bigger retail partners.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole like I was like, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
I haven't done anything creative. Like I haven't done anything film.
Can you argue that in its own way is creative?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think I was just sort of like kind of overwhelmed with things,
Uh-huh.
but it was pretty cool.
Okay. Okay, so you had a couple different ventures outside of that, and mostly film stuff was always there.
Most people, some was always there, and so so I guess after Better Puzzles, Bryce and I sort of took a step back. We actually ended up sort of we're still really good friends, but we ended up sort of seeing different and kind of going in our directions respectively. He's got real estate, and I was really focusing more on film. I was like, I really
Yeah.
need to focus on film.
Okay.
Red Clay kind of came in, Ed TV kind of came in right around the same time. And then right now, I'm really focusing on mostly film stuff as
Okay.
a company. And I'm getting a lot of new clients, and it's going really well.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like there's always something kind of going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's a lot of moving pieces. So tell me about where in the puzzle does Maestro's fall?
Maestro's has been there since the beginning.
the
Maestro's
beginning.
Classic has been there since the
Okay,
beginning. So
so-
when I started my career, I went to a barber.
Okay.
I was like in high school, and my
Yeah.
friend was like telling me about his barber. He's like, he's got an app, and this was early on. This is like 2014.
Okay.
I was like, he's got an app. He's like, yeah,
An app for what?
for his barbershop business.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm like, he's got an app. He's like, yeah. I was like, damn. I was like, I need a barber. Like, can you introduce me? He's like, yeah, just go. His name's Rudy, Rude Boy. I was like, all right, fuck it. Like, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
So I go to him. He's like, so he sits in the chair. You know, I'm kind of intimidated. He's like,
Yeah.
so what do you want, bro? I was like, you know, just kind of.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, cool. He's like, so what do you do, bro? I was like, you know, I'm in high school. I do. He's like, nah, bro. Like, what do you do?
Okay.
I was like, oh, all right. I was like, yeah. So I'm like filmmaking, you know, making videos. He's like, all right, cool. He's like, I need you to make a video for me. I was like, all right, like, yeah, like I don't think I've showed you anything. I might have shown him like a clip or something.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, cool. He's like, yeah, but I want to do the video at Maestro's.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that? He's like, it's this building, like it's this. They're doing beard care. So Maestro's was just starting out.
Okay.
He's like, it's this beard care company. Like they got a really dope spot, this and that. He's like, I want you to come up here. It's in PA. Like, let's go see him. Let's go look at the space. It'd
Yeah.
be really cool to shoot it there. He'll let me do it. I'm like, all right, cool. Mind you, I'm like in high school. I'm a junior in high
Yeah,
school.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, fuck. I was like, I gotta go to Pennsylvania. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that.
And how did the journey with them play out?
So we went up. I met the owner, Anthony, and the first time I introduced him, he's like, "Hey, what's up, brother? Like, good to see you. Good to meet you." He was really like, it was one of the things that took me back from. He was like really like personable. He was like super like
Yeah, that likable factor.
yeah. I was like, holy shit! Like, who is this guy?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is- So anyway, he was like, yeah, like you and I, we'll keep talking. You know, Rudy's gonna be the artist, but you and I, like, let's work together. I'm like, all right, cool. Like that sounds cool. So anyway, we made this video. It was I think it was a cool video for what it was at the time.
Yeah.
It was like this 10-minute video talking about Rudy and how he's creating his own stereotype and breaking his own mold from his career.
Okay.
And the owner loved it. Anthony loved it. And so, like, again, fast forward to me finding out I'm not going to college. And then a few months come by. He's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, hey, good. And like, kind of, you know, like I'm not in school, but he's like, oh, well, we're doing this event at Bethlehem. Like, you want to come film it?
Okay.
Pennsylvania. I was like, yeah, like, that's cool.
Yeah.
So then that sort of rekindled and really reignited our relationship because I
Okay.
spent the next 2 years with him just traveling the country. we were going, and this is like during the time that they had some awesome They were doing WWE, they were doing the Sixers. We were going to NASCAR, Comic-Con, So I'm like 18, 19, traveling the country. Like hitting up like awesome spots, eating great food, and documenting it all.
Tell me what does that look like? A hair product company. Is it facial hair or just hair in general?
So it started off as a beard care product company, right? It was primarily washes and butters. That's all it was.
Okay.
And then it really expanded over the last few over the last few years. The line has expanded into more focused beard care, like beard recoveries, beard oils. Okay. But now we've created body washes. And, the line's expanding.
So what does that, in terms of partnership, what does that look like for someone like, you said Comic-Con was one of them?
Yeah.
Comic-Con or like the WWE, where's the partnership in that?
So Comic-Con was one of those events that it wasn't so much that we were partnered with Comic-Con as it was to, Anthony always says, spread the news. Okay. Right? So we would go, we would have, at the time we didn't even have samples. We would just have cards and we would be like, hey, like that's a dope beard, bro. Like
almost like a trade. Just like a trade show, right?
Yeah, that's how we treated it, right? But it wasn't like a trade show per se for us. It was just, this is where the people are. This is the people that we want to influence. Like, let's go talk to them. And that's all it was. Yeah. Eventually, we got samples, and it really changed everything up. Okay. But WWE was a partnership, right? Okay. So we were partnered with them as not only a sponsor, but we had barbers backstage grooming all the wrestlers. Oh, wow. So I was backstage, I was doing all these things. It was cool. Yeah. Sixers was a similar thing. Although we didn't necessarily groom the players all the time. There's like there's a fine line between partnerships like that because the players sort of have their own contracts. Right. And like they don't really give you access to the players unless you want to pay more. So we were a partner. We had things on the Jumbotron. We had like a beard cam at the Sixers. Okay. I was at every Sixers home game for like a year or two. Oh wow. 2 years. It was cool. Yeah, yeah. NASCAR, similar thing. Yeah. He sponsors and still does every now and again. Sponsor a driver named Austin Dillon. Okay. Number 3. So he would have the logo on the helmet, on the chin, because it's the beard. Yeah. And then eventually I designed a car for him. Really? Stuff. Yeah, it was cool. So we went to Talladega and backstage, like hot passes were on the track. Like my man. It was cool. It was a really fun time and I, he knew my story. He knew like, hey, you didn't go to college. He's like, yeah, you didn't go to college, but like, this is gonna be your experience. Like, come with me. Like, let's have fun. Yeah. And that's what it was. I had a lot of fun. I made good money and I documented it all. Okay. And I really created a lot of memories, and I think our relationship really strengthened. Yeah. And we can still continue to work together. So
let's say we were both at not a place like the one we met today. Like we met was Charlie Square. Yeah. Right over at Catherine Rooney's. Yeah. Which is a great spot, by the way. People have fun there all the time, myself included. Yeah. But that's where we happened to officially meet. I knew of you beforehand. Yeah. I mean, you have like a very like, you have the look. You have a great set of hair and the mustache is outstanding. I appreciate it. Do you do this on purpose? Or?
So I worked for a beard care company since I was out of high school. Yeah. And I was the only one, he would always tell people whenever he introduced me, he's like, he's the only one allowed in the brand without a beard. Because everybody had to have a beard, right? Otherwise, like, why are you working for a beard care company? Yeah. So you'd be like, you're the exception. Like, you're the only one. Okay. And to this day I am, other than like, female barbers or females involved. But
okay. So where I was going with that was that if we were to like, let's say, I could see you hanging out in like a speakeasy, like in Wilmington, like Simmer Down or a place like that, right? Yeah. Let's say we were, which is, you have different conversations in those kind of places in comparison to somewhere like Trolley Square, where you're like yelling at each other. Yeah. Hey, what's up, bro? Good to see you. Where Simmer Down, you're like, oh yeah, so like, what are you doing? Or like something like the barber said to you, is like, what do you do? Yeah. If someone today asked you, and we were in that setting, and I asked you, what do you do? What would be what you say?
It's still something that I'm honestly like figuring out because I'm trying to say it in the least words possible to try and get as concise. But I would say that I'm a creative consultant. Okay. In the sense that I'm a filmmaker, right? But I can also help you if you need help from a branding standpoint and from a strategy standpoint. So that's really where my creative consultant. I would say I'm a creative consultant in the aspect that I've got experience in photography. I've photographed people, I've photographed products, I've photographed locations, I've filmed the same things. And then right now, like for example, like right now I'm designing a website for a school district. There you go. It's kind of a weird place to be. I never thought I'd be here. But again, it's like one of those little things where this project, Better Puzzles, took me on a creative project or a creative sort of road trip that I didn't think I would have. That forced me to learn Illustrator and all these other different, look at things really from an art point of view that ultimately influenced kind of where I am right now.
So you're like a Swiss Army knife of creativity.
I think that'd be a cool way of putting it.
Okay.
But again, I'm not trying to pigeonhole myself in that's why it's mostly film stuff, right? It's not just film. It's graphic. It's again like preparing scripts. Like I can do a lot, but ultimately I want to grow it to have a crew, a team that can do all these things. Okay.
And let's look back. Everything that you shared to myself and the audience, your story, your journey, would you let's go back to that drive back home after you were told you had to pay $80,000 up front. Now you can't come.
Yeah.
Let's look back at that. Would you have done anything differently?
No.
Would you take anything back?
No.
Okay. Why is that?
Every decision I've sort of made, whether good or bad, has led me to where I am today. And I've always, I like watching movies. I like watching shows with like flashbacks and like the ghost of something past, right? So I was like, what would have happened if I hadn't done that? Yeah. But I'm like, no, like the decisions I've made, whether good or bad, have led me to where I am today, and everything's sort of worked out and not been handed to me, but received at the right time at TV. The Emmy, right? Like all these different things have sort of come when I think I'm ready for them. And again, that's why like whenever I talk to people, like they're like, oh, like what's your advice? I'm like, look, like right now, for example, I have to talk to a lot of kids, right? I have to socialize with a lot of kids. My office is in high school at McCain.
Yeah. And before you tell me that, because that's how I'd like to close out the episode, your advice essentially to the future.
Yeah.
That is something I wanted to save as well for
We'll save it for the
Emmy.
Yes.
Tell me about the Emmy.
So the Emmy was, again,
because he's not only Emmy nominated, he's also an Emmy winner.
An Emmy Award winner, yes.
So tell me about that.
So again, I'm at EdTV. It's 2019. At this point, first time I think we were nominated for an Emmy, 2019, maybe 2018. We applied, I think, one year. We didn't get it, but we were nominated. No. Sorry, I lied. 2019, I believe, first year, we received 2 nominations for 2 different projects. And Rob at the time, he's like, hey, we got these nominations. Yeah. Like, we did this piece. I'm like, oh, shit. Like, that's pretty cool. But I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm what? I was 19, 20. I was like, that's cool, man. He's like, you want to go to Pittsburgh? I was like, yeah, like, let's go. Okay. And he's like, yeah, like, let's do it. So, I'm like, all right, I got to buy a suit. Like, I got to do all these things, right? So I bought a suit. We got the hotels. We're going to Pittsburgh. We're at the dinner, like, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, what am I doing here? Right? Because I'm, like, young. I'm, like, 20 years old. Yeah. I think I was 20 years old. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Emmy nominated at 20 years old.
I was like, this is crazy. And we're at the dinner, we're in the back, everybody, there's clearly cliques of people who go there every year and like get nominated. And I'm like, this is cool. I'm like, I have no idea who any of these people are. We're sitting at a people with strangers. Rob's like, we're cool, bro. Like, it's just us. And then, they're going through the nominations, they're going through the winners, they're announcing the categories. I'm eating, and they're like, A World Without Black People, which was the short film we created. Moises Velasquez, Rob Markopoulos, and Moises Velasquez were the winners, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, what? So it was like, I honestly, I was just like, it happened so quickly by the time like we realized what was happening that it was just one of those moments where I was like, this is not happening right now. And then to receive more nominations after that was really cool. And it was something I'm grateful for, but it's something that I'm like, all right, well, I got to keep creating. And again, like building.
The bar has been set higher and higher and higher.
And in the early years when I had MVP Productions, that was always my like sort of self-slogan to myself was make each video better than the last. Yeah. And that's something that I stayed true to, I think, every time I've create a video. You know, like a you know, there's projects you do commercially that are like, I gotta get the project done.
Yeah.
But when I do a project that's a project that's meaningful and that is like, this is what I'm doing. I mean, I do the best I can for every client. Don't get me wrong. But there's certain videos like that really push you creatively.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, I got to make each video better than the last.
Yep. Make each video better than the last.
That was my thing.
With that message, what is the message for Moises?
To the youth? Or
To the youth, to those that get that tuition bill.
Yeah.
You know, after, you know, like before they got the financial aid notice. What's your message with one and then the other?
Right now I'm in a position where I have to engage with all kinds of kids, different age groups. But my main office, I have two offices. I have a satellite and I have a main office. My main office is in a high school where I went to high school, in the video course sort of studio.
Okay.
So I have kids that are really involved. I have kids that aren't really involved. I'm not a teacher, right? So I'm sort of in my own office, my own space doing it, but kids will come in and talk to me and this and that.
Yeah.
And when I tell them, and really looking back, when I had the most success, when I had the most growth, is when I wasn't focused on money. It's when I was the most focused on just creating to create. And that's what I tell all the kids. I'm like, look, and there's one kid who's like doing great, right? But he's like so focused. He's like, yeah, you know, I gotta buy this camera, and if I gotta do all these weddings, I gotta do this, and you know, I'm like, he's like so focused on like the sort of the financial side of it, which isn't bad, you know. But I'm like, I was having a genuine conversation with him. I was like, hey, what grade are you in? He's like, I'm a sophomore. I was like, okay, bro, you're gonna be working all your life, right? Your pictures are good, but subjectively speaking, they're good, right? You want them to be great. You want to discover your eye. You want to discover your style, and that's gonna take time. I improved the most when I wasn't focused about my return. It's when I was focused. And now listen, this is advice creatively, right? I would say something different if you were focused on business at that point. But from a creative standpoint, I said, you should really focus on improving and on creating, because that's when you're going to challenge yourself the most. That's when you're going to develop your style. When people see this photo, are they going to say, oh, that's an EMILIO photo, right? Because everybody sort of develops their own style. I said, now look, I'm saying that as subjectively as when I've had the most success, right? If we're talking business, focus on sales, bro. Focus on sales. Like, that's it, right?
But even in business, you know, it's like the more creative you are, the more you set you are put in a different space from the majority in the marketplace, and as a result, people value different. Yeah, and it might become more valuable, and then you get more return on that
for sure.
Creativity.
And one thing I always, and in fact, I said to him, one of the, you know, Better Puzzles was a great project in the sense that it pushed me in so many ways. Yeah. And Bryce, my partner, was one of those big pushes, right? Because I was really focused on the creative and like the design, and he was like, no, think about the customer, think about this, think about that. And I was like, Bryce, like, we just got to create, and we got to, I was so focused on like being artsy and like going with the flow. But what he really drive deep into my head was the why. Because there's this great TEDx speech, I can't remember his name, but there's a great TEDx speech where it's all about the why, right? Okay. It's not if people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's what I told the kid. Yeah, I said, remember one thing: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So what's your why? I was like, right now you're in high school, cultivate your passion, build your style. Yeah. Nurture it, because listen, like, dude, the money's gonna come. Like, it's all gonna come. I mean, listen, again, when you graduate high school, dive deep into it. Dive deep into the business. But right now, like, you have an opportunity to not focus on that and create. So do it. Explore.
There you go. Focus on the craft.
Focus on the craft.
Focus on the craft.
Nobody wants to hire a bad plumber. You know?
Moises, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Mostly Film Stuff. You can find me on YouTube at Mostly. You can find me anywhere at Mostly Film Stuff. Really.
What's in the future for you?
For me, I really want to dive deeper into Mostly Film Stuff as a brand, as a company, and really focus on creative projects for different brands, for different artists, from a music standpoint, from an artist standpoint. But I really also want to stay true to being a filmmaker. So I really want to spend some time creating short films and films to hopefully, really, again, I was sort of away from film. I'm back into film. I was still in film, always involved, but I really want to push myself as a filmmaker and into the projects that even we're taking on. Like right now we're taking on some projects where we're going to be filming at a stadium in Lancaster, and we're trying to create all these different concepts. And I'm finally at the point where I can bring different people on to hire as a crew and to build a crew. And I really want to make sure that the content that we're creating, again, is true. And I'm thinking in my head, how do I develop my own style? How do I make sure that this is distinctive to who I am and to who the brand is really?
Okay.
And looking for that why, right? Continuously looking to understand why am I doing this? And ultimately, I think that will sort of take me on to what the next journey should be, the next chapter in the book.
I hear that. Moises, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Friday
brother.
evening. It means a lot. We know you're a busy man with a busy schedule and a lot going on. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of EP Podcast and the viewers. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. It was a pleasure. Again, thank you for having me on the show, brother.
Thank you.
And shout out to that guy behind the camera.
There you go. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that we have more amazing guests with amazing mustaches, such as Moises over here. And until then, bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.